It started with a swipe and ended with betrayal. This isn't just a love story, it's the ultimate scam.
Picture this. You're on Tinder. You swipe right on the perfect guy. Handsome and stylish. Owns private jets. 5-star dinners. With a smile that promises the world. A few weeks later, you're drowning in tens of thousands of debt. Your credit cards? Maxed out. Your bank? Frozen. And your so-called man? Vanished. No calls. No texts. And that's when it hits you. You weren't dating a billionaire. You were his next target. He called himself Simon Leviev. Claimed he was the son of a diamond mogul. Rich, connected, constantly traveling for security reasons. He made you feel special. Like you were living in a movie. But here's the truth. Simon Leviev didn't exist. His real name? Shimon Hayut. Born in Israel. No diamonds. No jets. Just a kid with a dream and no conscience. And by the time most people even heard his name, he had already scammed women across Europe out of millions of dollars. All without touching a weapon. Because his weapon was charm. He didn't steal your money. He made you give it to him. And for a while, he got away with it. This isn't just a cautionary tale, it's a breakdown of how one man used love as a con and left heartbreak, ruin, and legal chaos in his wake. This is the story of the Tinder Swindler. And if you think it couldn't happen to you, just wait until you hear how it started. Today on 360 Shares TV, we unpack the digital deception that turned dating into debt, and how a handful of brave women took on one of the most sophisticated romance scams the world has ever seen. It always started the same way. Swipe. Match. Conversation. Chemistry. Simon's profile was picture perfect. Literally. Designer clothes, luxury hotels, private jets, exotic locations. He called himself the Prince of Diamonds, and claimed he was the son of Lev Leviev, one of the richest diamond dealers in the world. If you looked him up, it seemed to check out. That's what made it so dangerous. He wasn't sloppy. He was strategic. Simon didn't chase random women, he carefully selected them. Typically young, attractive, professional women who looked independent and financially stable. Once he matched with a target, he didn't waste time. They'd message for a bit, maybe talk on the phone. Then came the big move, he'd invite her to meet him in person. Usually the very next day. And not just anywhere, he'd fly her out on a private jet to meet him in a 5-star hotel. He made sure the fantasy was real. Everything he did was designed to overwhelm the senses, emotionally and psychologically. That's how you get someone to trust you faster than logic allows. Once the relationship was established, Simon began laying the groundwork for what he called a security threat. He'd claim his enemies, rival diamond dealers or shady businessmen, were tracking his movements. He'd send you videos of his so-called bodyguard bloodied from a staged attack. Photos of fake death threats. Even audio clips of him panicking, saying it wasn't safe to use his own credit cards. And then came the ask. I need you to send me your credit card details. Just for a few days. My security team will pay you back. It didn't feel like a scam. It felt like helping someone you love stay alive.
This was the moment the fantasy began to crack. The dinners, the gifts, the private jets, they weren't tokens of love.
They were investments in her destruction. And every time you sent money, he rewarded you. Sweet messages, voice notes, flowers, even fake receipts showing the money was being processed. Here's the real trick. The money Simon used to wine and dine one woman was money he'd stolen from the last. It was a Ponzi scheme built on emotions. He kept the fantasy alive for each woman just long enough to squeeze out one more loan, one more credit card, one more flight ticket. And when you started asking too many questions, he ghosted, blocked you, vanished. And just like that, you were left with $20,000, $50,000 and sometimes over $250,000 in debt. Alone, confused, embarrassed and ashamed to tell anyone what happened. But Simon hadn't planned for what came next. Because these women, they refused to stay silent. For a while, Simon Leviev seemed untouchable. He had no criminal record in most of the countries where he operated. He left no paper trail. And the women he scammed? Most were too ashamed to speak up. That's exactly how he liked it. But then came Cece Leif Gelhoy, a Norwegian woman living in London. When Simon disappeared after borrowing tens of thousands from her, she broke down. Not just emotionally, financially, but shame turned into something else, rage. Instead of disappearing into the silence, Cece Leif went to VG, one of Norway's top investigative media outlets. She handed them the entire paper trail, voice notes, messages, photos, wire transfers, loan documents, even video clips of Simon pretending to be under threat. It was all there. And VG took the case. They started digging. And they found Pernilla Sjöholm, a Swedish woman who had also been scammed. And then Elaine Charlotte from the Netherlands, still in a relationship with Simon at the time. When they reached out to Elaine, she was shocked, heartbroken. But she didn't run. She played along. For a couple of weeks, Elaine pretended to still believe Simon. While he begged her to sell her car and send him more money, she was secretly collecting evidence. She even sold his designer clothes online and kept the profits, turning his own scam against him. And just like that, the victims became investigators. Their courage became a global headline. VG's full-length exposé titled, "The Tinder Swindler," went viral across Europe. Photos, audio recordings, and Simon's lies were laid out in chilling detail. But the story didn't end there. When Netflix released the documentary, everything changed. Overnight, Simon became one of the most hated and infamous names on the internet. People couldn't believe it. He didn't look like a con man. He didn't act like a thief. He wasn't violent or armed. So now you're thinking he must have gone to jail, right? After all the money he stole, the women he crushed, the global attention he sparked, surely justice was waiting at the end of this story. But the truth? It's a lot more complicated. Simon Leviev was finally arrested, but not because of what he did to Cece Leif, Pernilla, or Elaine. He was caught in Greece for using a fake passport. That's it. None of the financial fraud. None of the emotional abuse. None of the lies he used to ruin lives across countries. After his extradition to Israel, Simon was sentenced to 15 months in prison, but get this, he only served 5 months. He didn't steal it at gunpoint, one legal expert said. So proving fraud across borders was nearly impossible. The law couldn't keep up with his scam. He knew just how far to push, just how much to take, without crossing into a black and white crime. Simon manipulated a gray area in international law. Victims willingly took out loans. He never used force or made verifiable threats. The transactions happened across multiple countries, making prosecution complex. Even credit card companies hesitated. Because on paper, it looked like Simon had girlfriends, not victims. And once the Netflix documentary dropped, you'd think things would have changed. But instead of hiding, Simon doubled down. He hired a PR team, created an official Instagram page, claimed he was working on a book deal, even teased a dating advice website. He went from fugitive to influencer. It felt like a slap in the face, Cece Leif said. He walked free. We were the ones still paying for everything. Now here's where things get interesting. Legally, Simon walked, but socially, he was done. He was banned from most dating apps. He lost his social media verification. He was blacklisted by dozens of companies. Even luxury brands he wore, like Gucci and Louis Vuitton, publicly distanced themselves. He couldn't outrun the story. Because this time, his victims told it. It's easy to look back and say, how could they not see it? How do you loan a man $250,000 after only a few weeks? But that's the trap. You're thinking like a bystander, not like someone inside the story. Because the truth is, Simon didn't just steal money. He hijacked logic. He made his victims believe that love meant sacrifice, and sacrifice meant trust. And once you tie love to danger, you'll do anything to protect it. Remember, Shakespeare once said, "Love looks not with the eyes but with the mind, and therefore is winged Cupid painted blind." Love is indeed blind. There were warning signs, of course, but they were buried under luxury, urgency, and charm. Let's break them down. 1. Too much too fast. First date on a private jet? That's not romantic. That's psychological warfare dressed up as affection. Simon overwhelmed his target so they wouldn't have time to question it. 2. The enemy narrative. Claiming he was in danger gave him a constant excuse to be erratic, and kept victims emotionally hooked. It created a false sense of urgency. If I don't help him now, something could happen to him. 3. The love bombing. Constant texting. Pet names. Grand promises. He made you feel like you were the only woman in his world. But love bombing isn't love, it's control disguised as intimacy. 4. Isolation. Simon didn't want you talking to friends or asking for advice. He'd insist it was too dangerous to involve others. That secrecy? It's classic scam behavior. What Simon did wasn't new, but he weaponized it in a new space: dating apps. He used a psychological loop known as the compliance trap. First he asked for something small, then something bigger. And by the time the big request comes, you've already said yes so many times, it feels harder to say no. It's called foot in the door manipulation. And it works, especially when the person asking feels like your soulmate. Now add financial control to emotional attachment, and you've got romance fraud at its most dangerous. This wasn't stupidity, one fraud analyst said. This was someone exploiting the most human emotion we have: hope. And that's the scariest part. Because if Simon could do this with charm and a few selfies, who else is out there doing the same thing? When Simon Leviev walked out of prison after just 5 months, the world expected him to disappear. But instead, he leaned into the fame. He flashed watches, posted selfies, teased reality shows. He even offered $20,000 meet and greets, as if he hadn't shattered lives just months earlier. And while he played influencer, his victims were still fighting. Cecilia, Pernilla, Elaine. They weren't just left heartbroken. They were left in crippling debt. Loan sharks, credit card collectors, legal threats. All for money that had vanished into Simon's fake world of jets, bodyguards, and champagne. Even after the Netflix documentary went viral, none of them were reimbursed. They started GoFundMe pages. They appeared in interviews. But the debt didn't go away. People say, well, it was your choice to give him money, Cecilia shared. But when you're manipulated at that level, it doesn't feel like a choice. It's a trauma most people can't see. Because emotional fraud doesn't leave bruises, it leaves scars that live in your credit report, your self-worth, and your sense of reality. The Tinder Swindler story forced dating platforms to pay attention. Tinder, Hinge, and Bumble updated their security protocols. More identity checks, better fraud reporting, stronger messaging on romance scams. But truth is, Simon didn't break the system. He just exposed the cracks already there. He showed the world how easy it is to fake wealth, build trust, and walk away clean. And in that sense, he left behind a blueprint for other scammers. Before this case, romance fraud barely made headlines. Now, it's being studied by psychologists, banks, and law enforcement. Financial institutions started training staff to spot suspicious transactions linked to romance scams. Governments issued public warnings. And slowly, society began shifting its tone, from blaming victims to holding con artists accountable. Because what Simon did wasn't just a scam. It was psychological warfare disguised as love. He used what we all want: connection, loyalty, romance, and turned it into a weapon, Pernilla said. That's not just fraud. That's evil. What's next? Simon's victims are still rebuilding. They're stronger, louder, smarter. But they still carry the weight. And Simon? He's banned from most dating apps. He's been sued by the Leviev family for identity theft. And while he still posts online, the illusion is broken. He's not the Prince of Diamonds. He's a man exposed. And the internet never forgets.
He didn't break into banks. He didn't wear a mask. He didn't carry a gun. He didn't need to.
All Simon Leviev had to do was make you believe. Believe he loved you. believe you were special, believe the danger was real, and that only you could save him. It didn't happen in a dark alley or a war zone. It happened on a dating app, in first-class cabins, over candlelit dinners and FaceTime calls. He used the fantasy of love to bankrupt real women, and what hurts the most, he got away with it. But Cecily, Pernilla, and Elaine refused to be silent. They didn't just survive the scam, they exposed it. And in doing so, they gave millions of people a roadmap. This is what manipulation looks like. This is what silence sounds like. This is how you fight back. So maybe the real story here isn't just about Simon. It's about them. The women who were betrayed, humiliated, ridiculed, and still stood up. And maybe, just maybe, that's the part that scares men like Simon the most. If this story hit you hard, if it made you think twice about who you trust, then don't scroll away. Hit the like button. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Could this happen to you? Or someone you love? And subscribe to 360 Shares TV for more true crime stories that don't just retell the headlines, we break down what they really mean. Because here on this channel, crime doesn't just meet justice, it meets history.